Here we go!
Can I persuade you to join us for a drink? It's a tradition. Here.
Jar Jar, homie, my main man, quickly. Before the Separatists attack, get into the escape pod.
Hey! This is escape, then we're the pod.
Welcome back to Star Wars Escape Pod and the special Star Wars Podcast Day episode that we're going to be doing. We're going to be chatting with Blake and Ben, who are both returning to the podcast to celebrate this unique experience within the Star Wars fandom. It's the second annual Star Wars Podcast Day, which is kind of interesting. We've got some fun facts to share about that. We're going to maybe play some trivia and share some stories, and should be a good time. So, thanks for tuning in, and let's hit it.
Another happy landing.
All right, welcome back to the show, Ben.
Hey,
Hey, good to have you back
thanks
on.
so much.
And our co-host, Blake, welcome back.
Hey, happy podcast day, or whatever this is called.
Yeah. Happy Star Wars Podcast Day. It's it's a good time. It's going to be a good one. I don't know. I didn't even know about this last year, but this is just something that came up, and I figured, hey, let's celebrate Star Wars Podcast Day, because we've been around for since like 2019, before the pandemic and all that stuff. So what better way to maybe put out some fan content than celebrate a Star Wars podcast event, which is pretty neat. So got some fun facts here. I don't know if you guys knew this, but did you know that there are almost 4,000 Star Wars podcasts on the internet?
I'm not surprised, but I couldn't have put a number on it.
I think I'm more impressed by saying how many podcasts are in general. I didn't know podcasting was that big.
Yeah,
I think it's because it just became so accessible for everyone to do.
Right, yeah.
Like if this was 15, 20 years ago, it would be a different situation, right?
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that, because February 7th, which is today's date, back in 1999 was actually the very first Star Wars podcast. And it was, this year it's celebrating the 23rd anniversary of Jedi Talk, which was the very first Star Wars podcast on the internet, according to this particular source, which has been organizing this entire event. And then shortly after that, I guess, there came the likes of, I guess it was, what was it? The Jedi Council or something, or... and then Rebel Force.
Council?
Yeah, the ones that
RFR.
Forcecast. Yeah, Forcecast. That's the one. Yeah, Forcecast, and then RFR came, and then But by the time, I think it was like within the last 5 years, like there's been so many Star Wars podcasts that have shot up, and a lot of it has to do with Anchor, like Spotify's very own podcasting hosting platform, which is responsible for very easy distribution. So, I mean, do you guys listen to any other Star Wars podcasts other than this one? I know RFR was a big one for me. I like those guys.
What else do you need, man? Star Wars Escape Pod. That's all there is. That's all you need.
Self-promotion.
Nothing as regularly, but I do definitely listen to like different podcasts for here and there, especially for Star Wars ones too.
Yeah.
Main ones for me were RFR. I listened to a long time. You got me into that. And then I was listening to the One Shot podcast. They do like D&D, and they did a Star Wars series called Campaign. I really enjoyed that one quite a lot as well.
Gotcha. Yeah, interesting. So that's the D20 system, or is that the FFG one?
That was FFG. Well, they did a one shot before, which was D20, and then they switched over to FFG for the long series.
Huh. Interesting. Yeah, no, I like those Star Wars RPGs. The FFG stuff. It's brings me back.
I feel like we need to get back into it. It's been a while.
It has been a while.
That time.
Well, once in a while we do a one shot, but I mean, yeah, it's a good time. It's a good time.
You know, when you were hosting back in the day, you put a lot of effort in running our campaign. It went almost a year, a little over.
I think
a long
we
time.
ran for almost 2 years solid, and then
that's crazy.
when Wes started doing it, he ran it for like between 6 months and a year, I think.
Okay.
So, but it was less frequent at that point, and I don't know. But yeah, I did it I think we did it every week or every 2 weeks or something like that, and yeah, I put in a lot of effort because I found that just the pre-written stories and stuff, they just kind of tend to draw on a little bit, and yeah, it's a little more difficult, I think, for the players to keep interested. Whereas like the custom kind of one-shot things that I would always write were just always a little more interesting, and I tried to keep them very cinematic and you know, like all that. So
I know a big part for you was the FFG default storylines are all original trilogy, and you wanted to do prequel stuff. So
yeah, I wanted to try and I don't know, move the timeline a little bit around, and but I mean we did have a couple of like we did multiple different eras. So in Wes's game, you know, we played post Return of the Jedi, and then in mine that I hosted at first, we did do post Episode 4, and then eventually I think we did like a between Episode 3 and 4 kind of thing. So yeah, so that was kind of fun. But anyway, let's start off with just saying if anyone else wants to listen to other Star Wars podcasts out there who are also broadcasting the special event, you can look it up with hashtag Star Wars Podcast Day or hashtag SWPD 2022. And you can find all of those on Twitter, Instagram, whatever. There's a whole bunch. I think there's 90 plus Star Wars podcasts participating today, and all those episodes are going to be launching and releasing between the 7th and the 13th. So all thanks to Jedi Talk for kicking off this incredible Star Wars podcast fandom, and you know, contributing to almost nearly 4,000 podcasts out there talking Star Wars every week. It's pretty insane. So yeah, that's that. But guys, this is gonna be a crazy week because we're gonna see the finale of the Book of Boba Fett. So now I haven't heard any of
Book of Mandalorian.
Book of Mandalorian. Yeah, I haven't heard Ben's opinion on the show so far. In fact, I don't think you've been on since the show started. So
No.
you know, just tell us a little bit about your feelings on this show.
Okay, if you want my honest opinion, I watched an episode or two, and then I wanted to binge it. I really like binging shows. I'll be real. So I haven't watched it since. I watched it a little
Really?
bit, and I said I'm gonna wait to binge it. Yeah, I don't know what it is with me, but I think like I don't like waiting a week between episodes. I'm like I want to watch it the next one, and so every time a show comes out, except for the Mandalorian with you, but I usually just try and binge the show I'm watching. Wait till it's all out, and watch it. I have kept up on some of the news here and there. Like it was pretty hard to not. I mean, this might be a bit of a spoiler if someone really is also doing the same thing for you. But is that Cat when like I know Cad Bane comes in and things like that, and so I have like certain opinions. But no, I've generally just tried to like I watch an episode. I'm like, this looks pretty good. I'll probably watch it when it's over, and I can just binge it. I don't know. I feel like I get more immersed in TV shows when it just all hits me at once.
Right.
That's fair. Just get the whole story, and you get all the little details you might have missed if you'd waited.
Yeah, it's kind of like how I also really like marathoning shows, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair.
It's
Yeah.
like marathoning movies. It's like, I think you just get like a different experience of just like, whoa, I feel it all. And it's not like you forget things in between, but it's like, oh, I don't know, I feel like I'm better at picking up the little things and stuff like that. But that's my take on watching shows.
Right.
Well, I gotta tell you, Ben, the clock is ticking because the finale comes out this Thursday, so you better hurry up.
And once it
Might as
comes,
well
like
binge it all.
I'm talking like one weekend kind of binge. Like it'll just like I'm probably on Friday, Saturday. I'll rewatch it all. I'll just
Oh,
watch
just
it all.
take work off on Thursday.
Dude, there we go. Finally, Blake, I need you to coach my life. Just hey, dude, Star Wars is coming out.
I got
I'm
some
sorry.
pointers for you.
Like if
Number
you can
one.
convince my boss to let me have the work off, I'll do that.
I'll
Just
put in a
walk
good
in there.
word for you. I'll see what I can do.
I don't think you understand. This is important.
Yeah, well, it's because it's the last week of all this stuff going on. There's been, of course, a new drop for a new teaser. So spoilers a little bit if you haven't seen like the first couple episodes. Just tune it out for like the next 60 seconds while we take a quick listen to this. I just realized that's the wrong teaser. Let's take a look at the actual one.
I'll give you the sonic charges going on.
Yeah. All right, here's the actual one, 30 seconds long.
The storm is about to break.
I might be able to help with that.
These interlopers threaten our planet.
I have a few scores to settle.
And who might you be?
The Book of Boba Fett, now streaming on Disney+.
All right, there we go. So final episode comes out on Wednesday. And, a variety of stuff actually came out recently, which I'm going to run through real quick because interesting news. More recently, we had the launch of the High Republic young adult novel, which is called Midnight Horizon. And as well as the Marvel Comics High Republic issue number 14, we saw the launch of the Marvel miniseries called Halcyon Legacy, issue number 1, which is going to be based on the Galactic Star Cruiser in Disney World, telling a story in the High Republic era. It's going to be 5 issues long. We also saw the launch of Crimson Reign issue number 2, which is also a 5-part miniseries that's telling the sequel story to War of the Bounty Hunters and focuses in on Crimson Dawn and the character of Kira, who we were introduced to in Solo, a Star Wars story, who's finally kind of being brought back into the saga, and they're kind of filling out what happens with her. So lots of stuff to look forward to as far as Star Wars content goes. And in fact, even today I saw on the news, Star Wars Andor has been confirmed for a season 2, which is pretty nuts. And we haven't even seen season 1 yet, so that's coming out this year. But
that's a big move considering we haven't seen season 1.
Yeah,
what if we get another Solo?
Right. I mean, like I was wondering. I was like, geez. I mean,
and it's not to say I didn't like the movie, but it was a budgetary thing.
Right.
From their end.
Yeah. No, totally. And I think Andor is going to look fabulous. Like the way that they've described it, they're approaching it from the standpoint of a feature film that's just been divided into segments. So I assume it's probably going to be less episodes than even Mandalorian or Book of Boba. I would maybe pinpoint it at like 6 episodes. That's just my theory, but I'm thinking about 5 or 6 episodes that are maybe slightly more lengthy, that all kind of tell one kind of cinematic thing, a little bit like WandaVision maybe, or Loki, something that they approached with Falcon Winter Soldier. They approached that show with the same mentality, where it's like, okay, it's a shorter season, but we're gonna do it as if it was one movie and then just cut it all up into like some pieces. So that looks to be as if Andor might come across that way. I know I watched that behind the scenes thing. I don't know if you guys saw that, but there was like these big set pieces that they did, and it was pretty neat. I was like, oh, okay, this is a lot of budget going into this, which is good. It's going to be a good story.
Cool. Is Dave Filoni really involved with that one, or is he more like higher up on the like the food chain for this?
I don't know. I mean, like he did have that promotion, which kind of made him the creative supervisor for all things television. But he does. I mean, I would imagine he's involved, in some way, shape, or form, but I don't necessarily know if he's actually directing any of the episodes himself or writing. But we could be surprised.
Yeah, because it's just dawning on me now. This might be the first project, live action project, where it's not something that's really connected to stuff he's already done. Like this is
right.
Like it's Lucasfilm, but that was more like, I would say, John Knoll was behind a lot of the Rogue One stuff, as well as obviously Gareth Edwards and that whole side of things. But Dave Filoni, I don't think he touched any of the characters from Rogue One, so I'm curious to see what he'll do with that.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how that's going to play up, and of course how they warp all these other stories that they've been building. Because when Rogue One came out, like many of the other films, they do publish a lot of books and comics and stuff like that try and work their way into the canonicity and, you know, try and smooth the edges of the beginning and ends of that film into the rest of what they've done already in the canon. But you know, as we know from more recently in Book of Boba, as well as Bad Batch, you know, they've been able to do their own cutting corners, I guess, shall we say, of ignoring the linear chronology of certain events, and they've actually changed some things in the favor of telling the story they want to for the on-screen depiction. So there is, like I think we talked about in last week's Book of Boba episode about Grogu and the Yoda lightsaber and this and that. But I mean, you know, spoilers for anyone who's maybe listening here. But I mean, yeah, it's just it's one of those things, right? It's like, okay, well, some things happen in the comics that originally were to be a certain way, and now they've changed those things for the on-screen depiction. Where does the actual canonicity kind of happen, and is there a possible connection that all these events take place anyways, right? And we saw the beginning of Bad Batch and how Kanan Jarrus, or Caleb Doom, was you know, right off the bat in Order 66. Super cool moment to see on screen, by the way. But I owned the trade paperback Kanan Jarrus Jedi Padawan comic books that told that story a little.
Just toss that out the window.
Yeah, it was a slightly different telling, right? Like the premise was the same. Like Order 66 happened, and Caleb was on the run from a bunch of clones and all that stuff. But he was on a different planet. The Bad Batch wasn't there. It wasn't involved. And it was just a different, you know, minor details were just different, right? Like the overall thing was generally there, but like the details were completely off when they saw it in the show. So I think when it comes to on-screen depiction, the films always come first. Then there's like the live action shows, then the animated stuff, and then you get the novels, and then the novel/comic books kind of work their way into the.
It's funny that we've come full circle.
Yeah.
Because in the EU, that's what canon was.
Right. Yeah. The EU, and it's actually funny that you mentioned that, because I was actually looking this stuff up the other day. And Ben, did you ever read any of the old expanded universe stuff?
I read some. I can't tell you what I read. It was when I was young, and I was just like, hey, anything that's Star Wars, I'll read it.
Yeah.
I have no idea how canon it was.
Right.
I know. I was like, I read some of it, like, oh man, this is cool.
The Scholastic books.
Well, I also took it a lot. Like, I came a lot more from comic books. Like, and in Batman, like, yes, there's canon, but like, I think like traditional superhero comics have a lot more kind of flex with the official narrative. And so when I read the Star Wars books, I kind of took it like that. I was like, cool, this is an artist's interpretation of that. And I never really had that like firm canon that Star Wars has today.
Mm-hmm.
Nope, whatever I saw was added to the universe, and that was final. So as far as I was concerned, Starkiller was the most powerful character ever created, and that was that.
Dude, I loved that. I was like, man, why is he not though?
I'm totally okay with him being canon, but I do think he should be toned down.
The canonicity of some of these things. I have a quote here from Leland Chee, which he is a guy that's I don't know if he's still at Lucasfilm. I assume he is, maybe, but if he's not, that's I don't know what happened to him there. But you know, we have a guy that, well, you know, Lucasfilm has a guy that his name's Leland Chee, who runs the Holocron. What is it? The Holocron database or databanks or something like that. And there's a quote from him here that says, Lucas didn't really have much concern for what we were doing in the books and games. So the expanded universe was very much separate. What we had to do in the expanded universe was, if George did something in the films that contradicted something we had done in the expanded universe, then we'd have to change the EU to match what he did in the films. So that's just a little quote from Leland Chee as to how the old EU used to work. And now today with the Disney canon, it's not fully completely separate like the way it used to be with the old EU, but they try to build the stories all at the same time to just make, you know, a consistent, you know, thing, right? So
let me try and explain what you're saying in simpler details. It's like, basically, Star Wars Angry Birds is at the peak, and everything filtered through Angry Birds Star Wars at the top. That's confirmed.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's
The pyramid is upside down.
Yeah, the pyramid's upside down. Yeah, yeah. It's just it's one of those things though that it's just something to keep in mind. I guess like with the Disney canon, I guess their idea was well, the EU was separate from what Lucas was doing, but then when George, he would have his approval for certain things, but they kind of
he did touch on stuff, or else he wouldn't have turned down the rabbit. What was his name?
Yeah, of Jackson. Yeah.
Jackson.
Jackson the rabbit. Look it up, everyone on the internet. Jackson the rabbit. Yeah, it's just one of those things that like, okay, they built it on the side, right? But Disney, when they bought the franchise, they're like, okay, well, Lucas is gone. So now who's going to be the new Lucas that determines what's what? Oh, I have a good idea. Let's just make a story group, give them the kind of like the ability to kind of make things consistent as best as possible. Yeah, recommend things to storytellers like our directors and this and that. But then also kind of let's just start fresh so that we're building all these stories at the same time. And it started off like a really great idea, but out of the gate, there were some things that were just questionable. Because like I remember the first novel that came out, it was A New Dawn, the Star Wars novel regarding Hera and Kanan Jarrus before Star Wars Rebels, the show came out. And then
I remember this.
Yeah, and then we watched Star Wars Rebels, and I feel like Kanan Jarrus just did not live up to the depiction in the book. Like there was like some things about him that were like, he's just way more grizzled and like awesome in the book, and then in the show he was still a cool guy and a cool character, but it just seemed like there were some things that didn't really line up as far as the maturity of the character went. And
I agree. In the book, they really depicted him as this like smuggler, very Han Solo-y at this point.
Yeah.
But then in the show, right out of the gate, he was much more Jedi leaning. Like wanted to do the honorable thing all the time, not as like underhanded and sneaky.
Yeah, he hadn't fallen. In the show he hadn't fallen as far from being that Jedi status. Whereas in the book they make it seem as if he's like completely kind of lost his connection a little bit to what he used to be, right?
Well, he'd given up on it because he knows he's an outlaw. He can't live like that. Everyone else is dead, so what's the point? Just move on, be a normal person.
Yeah, yeah. Ben, did you ever watch Star Wars Rebels?
Not a ton of it.
It is
started to watch it. I started to watch it, and then I started rewatching. The Clone Wars with my fiance, and then so I put that on hold while I did that.
Yeah.
And now we're trying to finish that. But,
right.
And then I've watched like parts of it, and I kept up with a lot of the lore. One thing I was gonna say though is I think it's interesting with like new kind of like canon is I think before, at least when maybe this was different, for you guys, at least when I was young, like because there wasn't such an easily accessible like database of all the information collected, someone could come in and it's like, oh yeah, man, turns out this happened. I read it in a book, and I'm like, I can't refute that. I have no idea if you're wrong. But I feel like now everything's so centralized, and like the idea of like, oh, this is like hard canon is become a lot more important. Whereas before it was like some, kid came out with like a story, and I was like, I have no idea if this is real or not. And you're just like supposed to take it.
It's a big selling point because, you go to the theater and watch movies like these big Marvel blockbusters. And then it's almost, and I know, Ben, you're not a big Marvel guy. Like you're more of a DC guy. But like it's a big thing for people to go to the theater, watch a big blockbuster film, and then want the continuity in the next big chapter, right? And then off screen, it's like you get the TV stuff, and then you get, it's like, oh, look, there's a book or a comic that kind of ties into that show or that movie or whatever, right? And DC's been a lot more slack on like how they approach like a continuity on screen. Like they keep their TV stuff separate from their blockbuster stuff, and then even their blockbuster stuff has had multiple
number of resets.
Yeah, a number of resets. They do have a DCEU which tells a continuity, but then they're also not afraid to do stories that don't take place in that continuity, right? Like the Joker movie or the new Batman movie that's coming out in March. So yeah, but I mean, I wouldn't say they're struggling, but like Marvel's really hit kind of a golden egg with some of the most top grossing blockbuster films of all time. And part of the reason that it's so popular is that people go see these other movies. Like, it's like, oh yeah, I'm a big fan of Spider-Man or a big fan of Iron Man or whatever. And then they're like, oh, that character's in that thing. Like, let's go see that. And it's a huge selling point, right? So for Star Wars to kind of have that web of interconnected canonicity, it's like they got everything going for them. They got audiobooks, comics, novels, video game narratives, the shows, the animated, the films, right? Like they got so many layers of this thing. And when they started from scratch, arguably it could have been easier for them to keep track of it all, but out of the gate, already some continuity differences. And then as the years have gone by, this thing has just gotten so massive that it's now back to problem number one again. How do we keep track of it all?
I think that's the flip side of that. I think that's the flip side of it, though. Is like, I know people like, for like actually Marvel and Star Wars. I'm gonna say both Disney like big purchases because they have really like done a lot of TV and movies for a lot of those like I know people who are like, is it like they'll be like, is it really worth watching The Bad Batch if I can't watch The Mandalorian, The Book of Boba Fett? And it feels like the investment can be really big sometimes, which is something that I'm like, or if when people are like, well, I didn't like this story, I'm like, just ignore it then. And they're like, I can't just ignore this part of canon. I'm like, just ignore it. I don't know, my canon, it's not. And I think there's nothing.
I love all 6 movies.
But I think there's nothing, and I don't do this, and I get really frustrated when people do this, and I also do it to frustrate people. So I'm absolutely calling myself the big hypocrite here.
Yeah.
I'll say like my headcanon is different.
Yeah.
And just like I'd rather the story this happened. I was like, I don't like the way this happened. On my headcanon, this person did this. And I think there is certain like there's a certain amount you can do that, and a certain amount of like just accept of like, man, I hated how that went down, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting one.
Yeah, I mean, to each their own. I'm sure if you try to argue with Pablo Hidalgo, he would have some differences to say, but
yeah, I think
it makes it work for you.
The term headcanon has been thrown around a lot lately, and I think you're right when it comes to the amount of content that Star Wars has been putting out. You start to kind of pick your favorites and pick your pieces kind of thing. It's like, what do you want to be the story for you kind of thing, right? And it's like
tweak stuff a little bit, like Jar Jar Binks was actually a Sith Lord.
Dude, that's true.
Right. I mean, so like there's things where, I mean, I know there's like there's a lot of Star Wars content lately that maybe people might not like this or that or whatever, and for them their headcanon is it just doesn't exist. And I mean, as far as I go, like my own kind of like what I would call headcanon, I guess, is just I try to make sense of the existing canon that they're building. It's just headcanon wise, I just have to try and fill in the gaps when something doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And whether I like it or not, I still kind of accept that some things happened in the story, but I just try to make sense of why it exists, right? And so as far as the continuity differences, I think actually Alex actually described it really well on YouTube. Is you just kind of just be creative, right? Like I think when it comes to these storytellers, like they're telling these stories with within this crazy continuity, right? But I mean, they're telling them and they want to tell a good story, and if it suits the story best, they'll do certain things to maybe bend the continuity a little bit, because every year that bar just gets thicker, right? With more layers to cross over and interfere with. So
it's so much coming out all at once. Like, it's a full-time job to stay on top of it.
Right, and they're building stories in multiple points in the timeline and everything, so it can get crazy. And I think like we owe Lucasfilm at least the our own personal kind of patience and creativity to kind of make sense of things that might not line up properly out of the gate. Maybe we'll get a story down the road that makes sense of all this stuff.
Would you prefer they slow down, release more stuff, but had it more continuity in it?
Yes, I would because I have a huge. I'm not a very fast reader, and I don't find a lot of time to kind of read stuff. But I find there's so many comics and books that come out that I feel like I want to stay on top of and just can't. And because there's multiple comic series a week. Like these days, there's at least 3 issues for different series per week kind of thing. And in a month, that means you'll get like about, 8 or more singular chapters in a particular series. Right. And yeah, it's crazy, right? Like the ongoing series right now is Dr. Aphra, Star Wars, Bounty Hunters, the new miniseries for Crimson Reign, Halcyon Legacy. They got the IDW High Republic Adventures, the High
I gave
Republic
up on
from
this so long ago.
the High Republic from Marvel, and then the Darth Vader ongoing series. So that right there is 8, and then there's also just the Star Wars Adventures from IDW. Recently, Star Wars made a new licensing agreement with Dark Horse Comics, which means that they're going to be coming out with something as well. We're already at 10, right? So like there's so much.
That's just comics.
That's just comics, yeah. And then on occasion they'll drop an audiobook story. So far we've got the adapted Dr. Aphra into an audio format. There was the very well done Dooku Jedi Lost book that they it's a book, but it's just the script. Like it's an audio book that you have to enjoy kind of audibly. And then they did one more recently, which I think it's still coming out in or the novelization's coming out in March, but the audiobook has been released. It's called Tempest Runner, and it was also based in the High Republic. It's about Lorna D, the Nihil leader. So there's that as well, and then there's of course the Star Wars Insider magazine with the short stories that take place in the continuity. Right now, all of them are High Republic based. And then sometimes they drop a video game, and it's just like it just gets so much. And then
is there even people out who consume all of it?
Oh yeah, dude. Yeah, like I mean,
that's got to be a small number of people.
I mean, it's definitely like your big Star Wars YouTuber people are probably on top of everything, right? But because that's like their full time. That's like their full time job, right? Like
when you're in that situation, though.
Yeah.
If you're in that situation, you don't enjoy it anymore.
No, I know, right? And yeah, that's just.
I mean, maybe you do. If you can enjoy everything like that, that's actually really impressive.
It is because I find I'm not. I mean, Star Wars gets me excited, but and as much as I want to stay on top of this stuff, like I don't want it to feel like a chore, and I want to be excited about reading the next book or the next comic or whatever, but. If it doesn't get me going, like if I'm not, if I get off work or whatever, it's like, well, what am I going to do with the rest of my evening? It's not exactly the top of my list most of the time. And it's like, for these people that are full-time Star Wars content creators, like that's their thing.
Here's my question, Josh, do you think Star Wars needs to appeal to every demographic?
No.
I think that's the benefit of so many things. Like you can get like a comic series that you like, a comic series that someone else likes, which I think is cool. But does Star Wars need to appeal to everyone? Because I think, like, on one hand, it's like it's cool if everyone can love Star Wars, but then it also is like, I can't follow everything on Star Wars. What do you think? What do you think of your opinion on that?
Well, originally it was created for kids. It's just now those kids are all grown up and expect to still get stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then try to do. These people who were kids in the 70s and 80s and the 90s. And the kids that are coming out now.
That's a very good question, and I think that's also a very good response. But yeah, I mean, what I would say is like on top to add on top of that, I would say it's both a yes and no, right? Because yes, I think Lucasfilm wants to appeal to all the demographics, but no, I don't.
Money to be made in all
right?
Those demographics.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's also just the people pleasers that they want to ensure. Yes, Star Wars is for these people, right? And like they want to appeal to every demographic out there, both gender, sexual orientation, whatever, right? Like they want that brand to be accessible and familiar and comfortable with like any fan, right? And they don't want to cut anyone off, which is fair, right? And it makes sense in today's like kind of crazy world. It makes sense, but I mean, as far as like a storytelling purpose goes, I hope that they don't look at it as an agenda. Like I hope that they just focus on telling the best stories possible and not need to have to tell these stories to please those demographics, right? If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Well, like the whole point of it.
Yeah.
Like, do you want just to do do you want like a romance Star Wars novel and like this Star Wars? I just want sometimes think of like whenever I feel like franchises get massive, you get like. And I know like Star Wars, like the original movies were like, in part romance and part this, and like they had multiple genres attached to them. But I always think it's interesting when it's like, hey, we want to like have everyone join Star Wars. It's like then Star Wars becomes everything, and if I'm gonna quote,
what it is.
Syndrome.
Yeah.
And like when everyone's super, if everything's Star Wars, then nothing really is. But I mean, I'm not. And here's the thing: I say that, but I also love the Star Wars anime. Right? The Star Wars, like we did the thing on the Visions, I think it was, right?
Right.
That's right.
And I love those as like someone who likes anime. I'm like, part of me is like, yeah, but that's also me. Like I'm the guy who's like, oh man, it was sick. They released this like random, very niche. I mean, maybe not very niche. Anime is not like that small, but like kind of interesting little thing.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting. I know it's not canon. I do agree, and that kind of is the saving grace. Is like now like everyone like part of me is like if I had the choice, would I have some of those be canon? I'd be like, yeah, it'd be cool if some of them were canon.
Some of
But then
them,
I'm like,
yeah, some of them I think would fit in.
But
quite
then
well.
that just adds to the like growing. Hey, we're just releasing Star Wars something for like every individual niche. I think that there's just too much. Where like I kind of like it where it's like, hey, you know, it doesn't matter if you hate the prequels, it's what it is. And even the sequels, like it doesn't matter if you don't like the sequels, it's what it is. Now it's like there's so much everywhere. And I guess there was a lot everywhere with the expanded universe.
Not as much as there is now. Because
Right.
the thing is, yes, there was a lot of the expanded universe, but that's because it came out over 30 years.
Yeah.
If it came out at the rate it's coming out now, like
Right. No, you're right. Yeah. And,
there'd be
and
whole
Yeah.
landfills of Star Wars.
Like multiple TV shows that like there's a lot of TV shows going on right now for
Yeah.
Star Wars.
Yeah.
And like that's pretty impressive to me. I'm like, whoa, there's like a lot. Like just if I'm just to watch like every Star Wars TV show, that's like actually like not a small amount anymore.
Didn't Bob Iger say we're gonna slow down and
Yeah.
take what our plan?
Yeah.
Yeah, he did.
Psych!
Liar!
Then the Mandalorian made money.
Yeah, turns out you just needed to make more.
I
Yeah.
will say, I think it came back to I think like Disney Plus was carried on the Mandalorian. Like
Yeah,
I
for
think
sure.
for a new streaming service or anything that you need a critical mass of people for it to be worth it, your opening has to be super strong. And I remember like when it's kind of like how like launch titles for a video game console are super important. The launch title for the streaming service is super important, and really it was just on the back of the Mandalorian because everything else everyone's already seen before. Everyone's already seen the Beauty and the Beast and the Lion Kings, and they're all like, "Hey, look, you can watch the Lion King." It's like, dude, I own that on VHS from like the '80s or whatever.
Yeah.
Right? No one cares. I definitely did not come on the '80s. Did not go on the '80s, but you know, we're rolling with it. But then Mandalorian was like, holy crap. Which my also hot take is I actually thought that season 1 of the Mandalorian was a lot better than season 2.
Yeah, that's fair. I think
Yeah.
you mentioned that too, Blake.
Yep, I thought that as well.
Yeah.
I think part of it was season 2 to me felt like they intentionally spent more time trying to launch the other shows coming out.
Mm-hmm.
It was the same issue I had with the Arrow series back in the day.
Right.
Where
Yeah.
like season 1 was awesome, and then season 2 felt like they're like, oh, this really worked. Now let's use it to make more stuff.
Yeah, they used Arrow as a launch pad for all the other
Oh
shows.
yeah, I
right?
agree. I also really liked Arrow too, and then they're like the Flash gets his like little 3-episode thing, and then this guy, yeah.
Yeah, and Supergirl and
I
then
think-
Legends of Tomorrow and everything.
Yeah.
I
And,
think for me, what tied kind of into that was like, it did not feel like a lone gunman in the West, which I know it's like, but it definitely was a Western for you know all genre purposes.
Yeah.
And then it felt like it kind of pivoted hard from like that Western vibe to like it lost for me. The Mandalorian was a Western. It didn't become a lone gunman anymore with his kid. It became
that was his
Luke
story
Skywalker,
arc.
and we're going against the Empire and those things. I'm like, Luke Skywalker is cool, but I don't think that actually creatively was the best choice for it.
Right.
I think I liked it more with. I mean, maybe if that's the ending of it, cool. I just liked it more when it was just a couple people just going through the West, exploring planets, and being like, "Yo, we're gonna fight off some people who are raiding this farm community, and we're gonna do
to
this."
me, it sounds like your issue is the exact issue I have with every single fantasy novel series I read. It's that the first book, the first season is so good, and then the next season's like everything has to be bigger and badder, and then I just lose, like it's not as good because I like that's the small feel, right? Where instead of trying to make this big grand thing.
Yeah, and maybe if it felt from the beginning, I also think though that it's also hard. I think this is something I think Western studios actually maybe not everything's not that good at. It's like knowing when to end when you're ahead. No one wants to quit while they're ahead, but then you're just like, I don't know. I'm like, okay, now's a good time. You have a good ending. It's like, yeah, but now we're making the most amount of money. I'm like, just please.
Yeah, I know. It's
It was good.
I always think of that Batman quote when
Oh yeah.
when he says you either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain, right? Or like, from Harvey Dent. And
So true.
it's so true. Like in the corporate world, right? Like you get these crazy good stories, and then they start to milk it, and it's like they don't want to risk making something new that people might not like. They know what works, they know what makes money. Let's just keep going, right? And so yeah, like we are getting a Mandalorian season 3. We're all looking forward to it. But will
I'm
it
excited
continue?
for it.
Like, will we get a season 4 because it's so good? Will we get a season 5? And Andor already approved for a season 2. Like, maybe that's for creative story purposes. But I mean, I didn't hear a season 2 being greenlit last year or whatever. And we haven't even seen a single episode. But they have enough faith in the show that they're able to already produce a second season for this thing. So, I mean, where does it stop, right? And
Dude,
I mean,
The
I'd say-
Simpsons is on season 33.
Oh man, that show, I don't think it can be canceled. Like they got some award a few years ago for the longest running series of all time.
which show is this?
30. The
Yeah.
Simpsons is on season 33
Oh my
right
goodness.
now.
And I don't
there's
know
some
anyone
shows-
that watches it anymore. I mean, I that's okay. I rewatch seasons like 5 through 13, and that's it.
I'm trying to think right now. When was? I know my grandmother watched Coronation Street. Is that still going on? That's like a British soap opera. That I'm like, wow. I think, and like there are some shows that go up. I think also those kind of shows have hard reboots. Like the biggest example I can think of is actually Doctor Who, because Doctor Who is like, hey, we're done with this guy. Let's just soft reboot with the weird doctor changing kind of thing.
Right. And it's like an
I think-
in-universe story way of actually making a show endless in a way, right? Which is kind of
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. But
It's
in the
super
end, like
cool.
you do reset almost all the cast.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're like, hey, I really don't like this doctor. Like, I don't know,
Right.
I
Been me
don't
for
know
a
how much your
while.
audience really knows about Doctor Who, but I really like
stopped
Matt
after
Smith.
Tenet.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
No,
well,
dude, Matt Smith is my favorite.
I hear the Doctor's changing again. We don't know who it's gonna be, right?
Is it?
Yeah.
Holy
Yeah,
crap.
This
I forget her name.
this
She
last
left.
season, which was called Flux, season 13 or so, is the last one. So it was like a mini series within the continuity, and then now they're gonna take a break and then come back, and they'll have a new Doctor again. So, yeah. But no, it's true. I mean, like, when does it end? I mean, it's usually all about money. But I hope Mandalorian doesn't become the launch pad show, right? Like, I hope it's not the Arrow of the Star Wars universe, where, like, because we already know Ahsoka, Book of Boba, and then the now canceled Rangers of the New Republic were all supposed to spin off of Mandalorian, right? So
Yeah,
now
it
we're
shows
down
you
to-
right there.
Yeah.
Season 2 was a launching pad.
It was a launch pad.
But it still had good story, in my opinion. I still
It did, yeah. And I was very happy with the finale.
I still
and-
liked it. I wanted to be said, I still enjoyed it. I still watched the entire thing. I just
Yeah.
didn't like it as much as season 1.
Right.
That's fair.
Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, I guess we'll probably see whatever happens with Book of Boba. I guess in the end, it makes me wonder: is that going to be a launch pad for a second season for that show, or maybe spin off into something else? And will we get, or will it just feed right into Mandalorian season 3 that comes out later this year? Right.
Maybe this is their way of doing the Doctor Who reincarnation. They'll just keep launching the next series in
Yeah.
the previous one.
Yeah. Something like that, right? I mean, in a weird way, it kind of makes sense, but in another way, it's like, I don't know how I feel about that yet, right? Because I mean, I love Star Wars stuff, but it's like it gets to be a lot, right? And I think for a lot
I'm gonna call it here. They're using Book of Boba Fett to launch the new series about Machete, the Rancor trainer.
yeah, another Rodriguez special, Rodriguez. All right, so yeah, I mean, I don't know how you guys feel about sharing some stories about our first Star Wars kind of fandom memory, but I figured we would take a moment to do that in honor of Star Wars Podcast Day. Do any of you guys have a good one to share at some point? I mean, maybe I could start. I think one of my most vivid Star Wars memories was probably when Episode 3 came out, and I was already like a fan for many years. I was in like grade 5 when this movie came out, and it's I think I was maybe 3 or something, or maybe no, maybe 3 or 4 years old when Star Wars really kind of caught my attention, and I started to kind of I remember going to my neighbor's house, and they had these Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi and Darth Maul toys that were on these bases, and you push a button on it, and it started to play this music and make quotes, and it would kind of like move side to side with a lightsaber, and if you had all three of them, they would fight each other, kind of thing. So it was kind of a cool thing. Yeah, I remember my dad going to the movie theater with my aunt to see Attack of the Clones when it came out without me, and I was really I was really upset because I wanted to go to the movie theater to see this movie, but I wasn't as like hardcore fan as I was when the third episode of the prequels came out, and my parents saw the trailer and they took one look at it and they're like, "You're not going." And and I remember being absolutely devastated, and I was and I was so upset, man, and I would pawn on them for weeks. Like I think I saw it eventually. They kind of gave in because all my friends had seen it, and and I had all the Star Wars Lego. Like they had fed me all this Star Wars stuff because I was a huge fan, and now they wouldn't take me to see the movie. And so eventually my dad was like, okay, we should maybe. I was like crying one day in the kitchen, and he's like, okay, we should probably take him. And they gave in and they took me, and it was now to this day it's my favorite movie of the franchise. And
but you showed up late and you walked in. The first thing your parents saw was Jango Fett getting decapitated, right?
Well, the funny thing is, so Diego's been on the show before, right? Diego, our after show host for Clone Wars Talk. If anyone's been tuning into that show, and he saw the movie I think once or twice or something like that. But I don't know, maybe his memory was faulty or something like that. I don't know if he remembers this, but he would feed me like all this like bull. And just like he would tell me these things that just happened in the movie that didn't actually happen. So when I went and saw the movie, I was expecting something to happen because he kind of spoiled these things for me, right? But they didn't actually happen. And then when I saw the movie and it actually played on screen, I was like, hold on a minute. He was lying.
Do you remember what he said?
It was like weird stuff. Like his memory was like twisted on like the whole Grievous fight. And things that he said about Anakin's betrayal and stuff like that. It was just like I can't remember specifics, but I just remember
Grievous was Obi-Wan's dad.
Yeah. I remember maybe he just remembered the movie wrong, but he was telling me all these false things. And then when I actually saw the movie, I was just blown away at like at how different it was compared to his possible spoilers that he kind of gave me in the weeks before I saw the film. But yeah, I was so happy with it that I was in grade 5 at the time, and it's not like I had a job or anything like that, but I paid to go again, and I paid for my mom's ticket to take her because I was so convinced. I loved this movie so much that I was like, you have to see this movie. And so I used some of my birthday money to like pay for her ticket and everything. And then she went with me, and in the final fight scene on Mustafar, I had to go to the bathroom. And
No way.
I was like, I had to go to the bathroom. And I was young enough that, I had my parent go with me to the bathroom in the theater if I needed to go really badly. And she was like, you are sitting through the rest of this movie. So you like had me, I was like struggling so much to keep it in the final, like it was Anakin versus Obi-Wan, like super intense. And I was like, I gotta go pee. And she's like, no, you are staying here or going by yourself because I am watching the end of this movie.
Why do I picture you had the exact same face as Anakin when he screams at Obi-Wan?
Yeah.
I hate you!
Yeah, so, but no, I managed to watch the end. As soon as the credits hit, I just bolted and, just demolished that urinal. So, yeah, it was a good story. It was a funny story, but I figured I wanted to bring that up. You guys have any good stories like that?
Nothing as grand as that, I'll tell you that much.
I'm trying to think of like what my biggest moments were. I think for me, my favorite piece of Star Wars media is Star Wars Battlefront 2 on my PlayStation 2. Like, I actually think that game's better than all the movies. I don't know. That's like, I played that game so much. playing it again, it's still great. Also terribly unbalanced. Holy crap, the droids are absolutely broken. Like it would take like a small militia to kill one droideka. Anyway, but I remember playing through the campaign of that game, and there was something that hit hard when like I'm sitting in my my games room, like young. I forgot how old I was, but like around 10 years oldish, maybe a bit older. Maybe more grade like 6, 7, grade 6, 7, something like that. Um, and just when you're the one who like assaults the Jedi Temple, and you're the one I was like, oh, I'm the bad guys now.
Yeah.
And just like y'all knew it was coming, but like just like I remember pausing and it was like, dude, that's what I was like, dude. I remember at that point being like, screw the Jedi. I'm done with the Jedi. I'm fully on Team Stormtrooper. Hashtag clones did nothing wrong. But no, I was like that moment changed my entire perspective on like Star Wars. Like I used to see it as like a very like Jedi. I was like, whoa, nah, like what? Why are we following the role of two people when the entire army changes roles?
Right.
And what's
that
neat
was one of my
about that
favorites.
game is it also shows the perspective that the clones knew that was going to happen the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a good story. And Tamura Morrison voiced the main clone, which is pretty sweet, just like he did in Republic Commando. He played the voice of Boss and everything. That was my favorite Star Wars game back in the day. I think it came out around the same time as Battlefront 2, actually. Maybe the year before or something like that. But yeah, what about you, Blake? Any good Star Wars memories?
A couple small ones came to mind when you brought up the topic. I recall the first time I ever saw anything Star Wars like related at all, and this is before Phantom Menace came out, I think by just a few years, and I was at the small local swap meet, and my mom found the widescreen VHS box set of the original trilogy. I remember her I guess like sharing that with me and like being really excited, and then I recall we went home and we watched them, and from then on I was just like a huge fan of Star Wars. So naturally the Phantom Menace came out, we all went to that, and I don't remember seeing it. Well, I remember flashes of seeing it in theaters, but more fondly of Phantom Menace, I remember just sitting in our living room on the floor building the Lego Naboo Starfighter while watching the movie.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do you still have that? Because that one's a rare find.
I do have that, but obviously it's not in box.
You got the chrome bits on it, right? Like the
original one wasn't chrome.
Oh, you had the first one. Okay,
yeah, the
right.
very first one that came out in like '99.
Yeah,
I got most of the sets. I got the tanks and the droid, the carriers. I didn't get the pod racers originally, but then my cousin did, and he gave them to me years later.
Nice.
Like I was surprised actually. I was a big fan.
Yeah. Oh, that's.
And the only other memory that I think fits what we're talking about here is I recall it was after Attack of the Clones, but before Revenge of the Sith. Maybe it was actually before Attack of the Clones. It was around that time, and myself and my cousin were on a merry-go-round, and I remember this vividly because it just changed my life. And she told me that Anakin becomes Darth Vader. And I just did not believe her.
Really? Well, so you hadn't seen the other films at the time?
They weren't out yet.
Well, like, no, I mean, 4, 5, 6.
The original trilogy.
Oh, yeah. I've seen them many times, but I was so young, I didn't know names.
Right.
Like I didn't realize that Vader's name was Anakin. I just knew him as Darth Vader.
Yeah, I guess when you're younger, like you don't make all the connections, right? So yeah, that's hilarious. Wow.
Yeah, so like my mind was just blown. I'm like on this merry-go-round, I'm just like, what?
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that because Ben actually knows about this because I think I've changed his opinion forever on how to watch the Star Wars
100%.
movies with this argument. But whenever anyone asks me like how do you watch the Star Wars movies, I always say chronologically because for anyone who doesn't know about that secret, the big surprise is that secret, right? It's not that Luke's father is Darth Vader, but it's really like this prophesized chosen one that falls to the dark side and becomes this villain. It's like watching Harry Potter and then in the third movie he becomes Voldemort or something, right? Like it's like this tremendously big moment. And I always made if to someone who knows nothing about the story, I always thought that's that's the biggest thing, because like this big saga is really about the Skywalkers, right? And it's primarily about the fall and redemption of Anakin Skywalker. So, and then of course his son being a big part of those last three films. But yeah, like that's usually what I mention to people when they ask me as to like, oh, how should I watch them? I usually give them that answer, but. Of course, I don't tell them the secret, but
I was always a big fan of the machete order until there became too many movies. You can't do it anymore.
No, you can't. It's crazy because when I watched the Clone Wars finale with Diego for the first time, I'd already seen it a few times, and when we were doing Clone Wars Talk, it kind of overlapped with the last season that came out, and then when he saw it. I think it's on record at some point, but he said he can never watch episode 3 again without watching those episodes that overlap with the film. And because it just doesn't feel complete now without that story interwoven through that narrative. Right. And
I recall we did that once. We watched 30 minutes of Revenge of the Sith.
I knew exactly where to pause it and switch. Yeah.
We switched over, watched the Clone Wars season 6, and then went back to the movie.
Yeah, season 7. Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, 7. Yeah.
They should just release a cut where they splice it. Honestly, just put that on Disney Plus.
Yeah, I mean the transition between animation and live action gets to be a little like you got to get used to it a little bit, I guess. But if you've seen Clone Wars so many times enough to kind of be okay with that visual aesthetic, it's usually fine. I think the biggest difference for me that it was more obvious, more stand out, was the voice of Anakin going from Clone Wars to the live action film.
Yeah,
that was the biggest contrast, I think.
I didn't even notice.
Yeah.
I was blown away with the level of detail they did with keeping the consistency.
Oh man, yeah.
There's shots because they worked around Ahsoka not being there, right? So there's a scene where the Jedi Council are all in this like meeting room, and in Clone Wars, I think it is. It's, it's one or the other. I can't remember which one comes first. But it's like Ahsoka is in the room and she like leaves, and then in the film is the exact same scene right after she leaves, and like Anakin walks in.
Yeah,
so it was like it's crazy.
That's right.
Almost shot for shot. Like it feels like it should have been one scene.
Yeah, completely overlaps. It's fantastic, and and that's why he gave me that reason. And I was like, I thought about it. I was like, okay, well, that's pretty nuts, because that's his favorite Star Wars movie as well, and to now change that entire kind of viewing experience, and now he has to watch it again with the Clone Wars every time he watches it now. I was like, okay, that's a bold statement to make. But also it's like you throw, these spin-off movies into the mix, and then it's like, where do the live action shows fall, right? Because now big events are happening in these live action shows, and it's like there's just so much to watch that, is it this thing like the MCU where it's like you kind of have to do it chronologically at this point if you really want to make sense of it all, because it's just so big.
I would almost, to new people who have never seen it before, would just get them to watch the original 6 movies, and then come back for everything else. Just because it becomes so unwieldy. You're like,
I think it depends.
Oh, you
want to
try it? Here's 12 movies.
Okay, I think it's different if you're like a 6-year-old kid and a parent. You can freaking just do it you're so much time together, anyway. Right? No, yeah. but if they're a young kid and you're the parent, I think you have so much time on your hands with them. That's like, hey, if it's like you and a buddy where you have to, like, if you live together, then I think then it's a lot easier to do the TV show if you can spend a lot of time together. Whereas if it's like every time it's like hard to do and you have to like, it's like if it's easy to do a regular thing, you can do it. If not, I think it becomes a lot tougher.
That must be a very very special experience, of course, if you're parent and showing your kid the Star Wars movies for the first time. I'm sure whatever order you guys choose to show them in is probably it's
No. My family showed it to me all in a random order. So screw that.
Classic move.
Yeah. So yeah, screw all that. Because there's always my siblings. So my siblings like, oh, we're gonna watch this one. But like if they wouldn't not watch a movie because like their younger brother couldn't make it, but they were nice. They'd invite me if I could. So I'd like watch like 1, then 3, or like, and then like. they'd like go like, oh, let's watch the original trilogy. So like one, and they're like, oh, okay, like hey, because they already seen them all before, so they could just like do whatever they wanted. No, I was screwed over.
That sounds kind of terrible.
Well, okay, here's the other thing is that I also like for most of my like big like franchises, I already had most things spoiled for me because like ones where I was a kid, my parents like were like, oh, you can't watch it. But my brothers could watch it, and they always bought the video games, so I'd learn the movies from the video game cutscenes first.
Yeah.
Oh no.
And that's how I found everything out. Like, yeah, like
That's
I
so
learned about
interesting.
Lord of the Rings through my brother playing the game on the GameCube because I wasn't allowed to watch it.
Yeah.
But it was my mom like wasn't
It's
she was
funny.
like, oh, you spend time with your brother.
It's funny that you mentioned that because I was watching a video on YouTube recently about some guy. He was ranking all the Lego games, like all of the like. There's like 20 something Lego games, right? And of course, when he got to the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit ones, he said that when he had, I guess it was a younger guy because he said he hadn't watched the films yet. I guess maybe for age purposes or something like that when that game came out. Which I feel like that game didn't come out that long ago, but maybe it was. But that game basically just he got the story from the Lego Lord of the Rings game.
Oh my god!
And then he watched the series and
Like,
and I was like,
they
oh,
got
wow.
it wrong. This is what happened in the game.
I feel like Lego's not made for that.
No, because there's so much goofy Lego like
Yeah, and also you
warping
don't get their humor unless you already know what they're referencing.
Yeah,
okay,
no,
cool.
exactly. Yeah. You don't really understand the Lego humor of what they're cracking jokes about until you actually see the original stuff that it's based on, right? So, but no, it's true. I mean, like these games are made for a younger audience sometimes than what the films are made for, and yeah, a lot of kids actually who don't see the movies will get those stories from other sources, right? And I mean, we're living in a day and age in which Fortnite basically rules the internet, right? Where I remember when Rise of Skywalker it was about to come out. And the monologue that Palpatine releases to the galaxy about his resurrection or his return wasn't in the movie. They had played it in Fortnite for anyone between, this week and that week kind of thing. You could hear it in the game if you played Fortnite, but there was no other way to hear this thing. It wasn't on the website. They didn't launch it on YouTube. Nothing. Like you had to be playing Fortnite to be able to get this piece of Palpatine, Ian McDiarmid monologue. And then that was kind of their way of marketing to that audience to go to the movie
bizarre.
and see the film. But it's like, as a Star Wars fan,
this is
I
what
wish.
we meant.
Yeah, I mean, like.
Is there too much Star Wars in places?
Right.
When it's in, oh, dude, did you check out the Fortnite audio clips? That's when you hit something different.
The thing is, though, like, yeah, it's really weird and it makes it super niche, and a lot of people will like miss it. But honestly, I think it's something George would have done.
I agree. It feels like it's like, oh man, you could only get this thing if you like bought a McDonald's Happy Meal. I feel like I heard those all the time. It's like, oh yeah, this is a limited release McDonald's Happy Meal toy.
Yeah,
I'm like, what the heck?
It's printed on the inside of the French fry bags. You gotta tear the bags open, and then inside there is the opening dialogue. You
guys remember Jabba the Hutt pizza boxes? From Pizza Hut. Yeah.
Yeah. Jabba
Dude,
the Hutt.
I always sat inside Pizza Hut.
Yeah.
Like
Pizza Hut,
apparently.
Pizza Hut would give you, I think it was when Phantom Menace or Attack of the Clones came out. It was a long time ago. Or maybe, no, you know what? It may have even been the special, I think it was the special edition DVD releases or something. But they had this marketing ploy or this marketing thing with Pizza Hut where the boxes, I think they had Jabba on the cover, right, of the pizza box wearing the hat, right, the little Pizza Hut hat thing, and then I think they also did some other stuff or whatever, but yeah, it
might
was,
have been when they did the original special editions in the 90s. They had a bunch of ads at that time for stuff like that.
Right.
And they did it. It's funny because for a long time I thought I grew up with the original trilogy because there was ads and toys that came out for the original trilogy in the 90s.
It's just the re-releases, yeah.
Yeah, but 10, 15-year-old me didn't know the difference.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's funny that how it works that way, right? Because it's just I guess you bringing movies back to the theater and stuff, like, yeah, it can give someone an experience of feeling like they're seeing it for the first time, even though it's been out for a while and stuff. So I always like it when they bring movies back to the theater, and it's really too bad that they canceled all those 3D Star Wars releases in the theater, because the Phantom Menace was the only one who got the release. But there
I went
is
to that opening day, and it was surprisingly busy.
Oh,
and
yeah.
everyone was in costume.
That movie on Wikipedia, when you look at the box office mojo, it's actually the re-release for 3D that's bumped it up more positions than it used to be. Like, it made a really like a decent amount of money, because at that point I think it had been, was it, I think 15 years? When did that 3D release come out? Like 2012 or something like that?
2012, I think.
Something around there.
Sounds right.
Yeah, it was around the same time that they announced the Blu-ray releases, I believe. But yeah, it was a while back now. But not exactly the 20-year mark, but it was getting close to that. And it's been a while since people had seen this movie, but maybe some people, or maybe a lot of people watch it every week. Who knows, right? But the fact that it was in 3D for the first time, and then re-releasing that in the theater experience, people were just engrossed in it. And I remember our local theater had like people dressed up as Darth Maul, and they had the 501st Stormtroopers arrive, and they were in the lobby hanging out, and it was just a really cool thing.
We all went with a different version of Luke.
Yeah, you said you walked in the theater, people cheered, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so there a lot of people just had Jedi costumes.
Yeah.
But I was a New Hope Luke, and then a buddy of mine was Luke training on Dagobah, and then the third guy was Luke Jedi Knight.
Nice. Well, we're getting to the hour minute mark here for the podcast length, but I figured we would play a quick round of Star Wars Ultimate Trivia, just because celebratory purposes. Is that the right term I'm looking for? Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Cool. So if you guys are up for it, we got some brand new sound effects to determine right and wrong answers using the new gear, of course. So if you hear this.
How embarrassing. How embarrassing.
That is a wrong answer. And if you hear this.
Good.
That is the correct answer.
You should have saved it. Surprise.
I thought it was kind of funny, like putting Palpatine as the right and Yoda as the right. I thought it was kind of ironic. Yeah. All right. So if you guys are ready for this, maybe we'll do like four questions each, or maybe 6 or something like that, and depending on how the score goes, and then I'll call it.
Sure. Sounds fun.
Cool. All right. Hope you guys are ready for this. So just a quick brush up. You start at tier 2. For anyone who's possibly tuned into the show before and listened to our Star Wars Ultimate Trivia games that we've had on the show, we have like a hierarchy system as to how this game works. And let me just bring it up here. So tier 1 is the main movies / easy behind the scenes. Tier 2 is animated and live action shows. Tier 3 is games, comics, and novels from the canon. Tier 4 is legends / expanded universe. Tier 5 is random / behind the scenes and very difficult to answer questions. So without further ado, the game starts at tier 2. If you get a question wrong, it sets you back a tier. If you get a question right, it bumps you up a tier. Here we go. Our first question is for Blake. Maul's set of legs are magically made from, is it A, garbage, B, droid parts, C, Grievous's legs, or D, ship parts?
Because I know it's the junkyard. I'm going to go with ship parts.
Ooh.
Ship parts is the incorrect answer. I am sorry.
You can give me the right one. Was it droid parts?
Embarrassing.
It's droid parts.
How
I thought it was
embarrassing.
droid parts. I was like, I think it's droid parts. Nice.
Yes, the correct answer was B, droid parts.
Nice.
Alrighty, next question is for Ben. Obi-Wan first came up with his nickname Ben during the Clone Wars. Which bounty hunter was he posing as during this time? Was it A, Jabo, B, Cad Bane, C, Racco Hardeen, or D, Olbap Olglader?
I think it was Racco Hardeen. I'm pretty sure it was Racco.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, you don't often. Actually, I forgot this was gonna be multiple choice, and it was like, what bounty hunter? I was like, I completely forgot his name. And I was like, I was like, okay, I think I can remember it on this.
There you go.
Could have pulled.
All right, Blake. What is Count Dooku's Sith name? Is it A, Tyrannic, B, Bane, C, Sylvan, or D, Tyrannus?
D. Tyrannus.
Alrighty.
Welcome back to the correct answer club, Blake.
Quit showing off.
I'm about to get this one wrong. I have a bag of jinx myself.
Van, the Battle of Jakku was how many years after the Battle of Endor? Was it A, 5, B, 1, C, 29, or D, 11?
I want you to know I recently found out the answer to this, which is gonna make it way more embarrassing when I get this wrong.
Were you the one who had this question on the last time we played?
No, I didn't have it, but I remember hearing this last time. I remember people talking about it, and I'm like, I remember it being surprising. That's it. So I think it's either 1, 29, or 5, which doesn't really help me that much. So I'm just gonna go. So the Battle of Jakku was how many years after the Battle of Endor?
Yeah.
I remember being surprising. So was it 1 year after?
We're going with B?
1 year. Welcome. I'm absolutely killing it out here.
Alrighty. Next question is for Blake. Ezra Bridger's homeworld is it A, Dantooine, B, Lothal, C, Tatooine, or D, Florum?
B. Lothal.
Well, I would have got that one wrong. Question: does the Battle of Jakku? Do we have any big comics or anything on the Battle of Jakku?
Yeah. So actually, the aftermath.
Trilogy.
Yeah, the aftermath trilogy of books kind of works its way between the end of Episode 6 and the Battle of Jakku. Also, I think the Shattered Empire miniseries from Marvel Star Wars is also a really good one to read. And there was obviously the campaign for Battlefront 2 is a good one to obviously kind of experience some of the Battle of Jakku as well. And let me think. There was I believe there was one other thing, and it's not coming to mind right now. But yeah, there's not a whole lot of content that gets in that first year, of worth of time. But yeah, it's an interesting event, that's for sure. The next question is for Ben. The Secret Apprentice's last name is what? Is it A, Galen Merrick? Apprentice's name is what? Yeah. B, Ram Koda. C, Ezra Bridger, or D, Cade Skywalker?
I do not know. We're going back to the old high school Ben multiple choice guessing strategy. Can you repeat the question?
Yes.
The option, sorry.
The Secret Apprentice's name is what? Is it A, Galen Merrick, B, Ram Koda, C, Ezra Bridger, or D, Cade Skywalker?
Now, do would be really helpful here is if I knew who the Secret Apprentice was specifically referring to.
All right, yeah. So clarification, we are talking about the Force Unleashed Secret Apprentice.
Oh, okay, that one. Okay. Shoot, I played through both Force Unleashed games too. They're some of my favorites. I can tell you, I almost paid zero attention to the story. I was just swinging my Wii remote and nunchuck like nobody's business.
I think that's the idea of the game.
Yeah, I was like, man. Okay, last time, I promise. Now that I know that it's this, I can listen in and was like, oh shit, I might actually know this one. One more time.
All right. The Secret Apprentice's name is what? Is it A, Galen Merrick, B, Ram Koda, C, Ezra Bridger, or D, Cade Skywalker?
I feel like Koda was part of the game. I feel like Koda was the Jedi in the game. But let's go with B.
We're going with B, Ram Koda?
Yeah.
How embarrassing.
Was Koda was he the Jedi in that game?
Yeah.
He's the one who trained.
I knew. I was like, man, he's definitely in the game, and he was the only one I could remember in the game. I was like, I feel like he was that.
It's a very Jedi name, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. What was his name again?
Galen Merrick. Yeah.
Dude, it was a 50-50 shot. I was like, I don't remember Galen and Merrick as much. Oh my God, that feels bad.
The interesting thing about Ram Koda is that when they did Star Wars Rebels, I think a lot of Kanan Jarrus is kind of based on Ram Koda a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. And it's also Ram Koda. He is blinded by Galen. Right?
Yeah, because in the expanded universe in Star Wars Legends, Galen Merrick and Ram Koda eventually become friends, but they first kind of fight each other Galen Merrick is responsible for blinding Ram Koda, who wears like a kind of a thing across his eyes, and he's also got a ponytail and stuff like that. And he's also one of the
like underground smugglers.
Yeah, he's kind of like an edgy guy who wears a bit of like I think he wears some armor pieces and stuff like that too, right?
Yeah, I think they both wear the same shoulder pauldron.
Yeah, so Kanan Jarrus basically is the same dude. Like he's got the eyes thing, he's blinded eventually, he's got the ponytail, he wears the pauldron thing on his shoulder, and he's also one of the founding Jedi of the Rebellion. So they got all of that stuff in common. Yeah.
I feel bad now. I was so close, and I should have just went my gut. Dang it.
Next question is for Blake. Vader Immortal takes place on what planet? Is it A, Coruscant, B, Nur, C, Bogana, or D, Mustafar?
D, Mustafar.
Dang it.
All right. The next question is for Ben. There are 2 Thrawn trilogies in the canon so far, which is 6 books. Name the subtitle of the prequel trilogy of the Thrawn series. Is it A, Thrawn Rising, B, Thrawn Ascendancy, C, Thrawn Forever, or D, Thrawn Origins?
The sum total of my Thrawn information is AJ always playing him with AJ always talking about him.
AJ had Thrawn set as a screensaver on his phone for years. I think it's still set to that.
Grand Admiral Thrawn. I want to say it's like, I think Ascendancy. I think Thrawn Forever. Is this like name one of them?
This is
what's the specific ending of the question?
So there's 2 trilogies, which make 6 Thrawn books. 3 of them have a subtitle to defer the trilogy from the other trilogy, right? So the question is, what is that subtitle? Is it Rising, Ascendancy, Forever?
Is it the first one
Origins?
or the second one?
That is the question I'm asking you.
No. I mean, like, is it like the first series of books, or is this the second series of books? Or this is the
prequel trilogy that they did after the first.
I think
3.
it's Thrawn Ascendancy. I think that's what I remember it being. It could be Thrawn Uprising, but I'm going with Thrawn Ascendancy. Go with that. Hit me with the embarrassing. Talk to me. Oh no, mad respect.
You got it. You got it.
Bless.
All right, we are sitting at 3-3 as far as the score goes. So let's do one more round and see if it's still a tie. The next question is for Blake. Luke Skywalker's wife in Legends. Is it A, Lumaya, B, Leia Organa, C, Mara Jade, or D, Hera Syndulla?
Mara Jade. D,
you absolutely gumbo.
All right, let's go with next question is for Ben. When does the Heir to the Empire story occur? Is it A, before episode 1, B, after episode 3, C, during episode 6, or D, after episode 6?
Heir to the Empire.
Yeah. This is an expanded universe Star Wars Legends question.
Never at all even heard of this. So I'm going just on the fact that my guess, Heir to the Empire sounds very either during episode 6 or after episode 6. I want to say after episode 6.
That is correct. We're going to keep going.
That's the original Thrawn trilogy.
Yeah, that is the original Thrawn trilogy, which yeah. Fun fact, actually, that I found out recently. The mountains in the Bad Batch, which we saw the Bad Batch infiltrate and get one of their own back, I believe, right? It was... they were doing something there, but there was like a cloning facility there and stuff like that. That's the same location that was first created for the Heir to the Empire series in trilogy, and it was a cloning facility that was brought into the trilogy of books. Same name for the place and everything like that. So I actually didn't know that until recently. So cool. Nice little Easter egg that they brought back into the canon from the EU. Classic Dave Filoni. So next question is for Blake. We're still a tie game, 4-4. Palpatine began to feel something calling him to the unknown regions. Who did he consult for the information about those territories? Was it A, Thrawn, B, Vader, C, Tor Valum, or D, Snoke?
I'm going to go with A, Thrawn.
That is correct.
Oh my goodness! Come on.
A lot of Thrawn questions in a row here.
Oh my goodness.
Like
Okay.
4.
Ben.
Next question, Thrawn.
Ben, I think you've hit tier 5 here because you got a really tough one here.
No!
Where is Dave Filoni originally from? Is it A, San Francisco, B, New York, C, Pittsburgh, or D, Los Angeles?
What are the options? I was just thinking about how screwed I am with each option.
Is it A, San Francisco, B, New York, C, Pittsburgh, or D, Los Angeles?
Everything in me says San Francisco. I think he's got that he has that kind of vibe of someone who that tech startup vibe. I was literally just looking at his Wikipedia page too on what actually has he done other than that, and I was looking at how he's done a bunch of other shows I've looked at, like Jake the American Dragon and stuff like that before this, and never did I once think where is he from, but hit me up with frickin' San Fran.
All right.
How embarrassing.
There it goes.
Embarrassing.
Wow.
He originally
Wait. Blake,
Yeah.
where is he from?
I'm going to say Pittsburgh. He's a huge Penguins fan.
That is correct.
Is he?
Yeah,
he
I
is
got
from
her.
Pittsburgh, yeah. All right, and there we have it.
Yeah, he always wears a Penguins jersey all the time.
One sec. I feel like I never see him wear a Penguin jersey.
Well done, Blake. That was a worthy effort, Ben.
Thank you.
We, of course.
I was about to say, I was like, man, he might be from Pittsburgh, but no one's from Pittsburgh. So
It's so true, right?
I was like, he wears a cowboy hat, so he doesn't feel like a big city guy, but no one's from Pittsburgh.
Well, I think, Southern California, I guess people might wear. I don't know.
Yeah, I thought that he was just one of those cool guys.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there we have it. I think we're at I don't know. I forget how many games we've won now in the past with. Last time Ben, when you played, I don't think Blake was here, was he?
Correct. Yeah.
Right. Okay. All right. That would have been an interesting experience with Phil and everyone else competing. But I think you guys are both sitting at one game per person now for victory
I'm
points.
2.
You're at 2. Oh, you're at 2 if we count the other ones, right?
Don't count the other ones.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
I think going into the new year, we're at 1-1.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
Yeah. But there you have it. So Star Wars Podcast Day, coming to a close, and I feel like it's a crazy business, to be producing Star Wars content for the fandom and everything like that. And I'm really happy you guys make the time to come on and chat Star Wars with me every week or every now and again. So
Or maybe 3 times in a week, such as this week.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah, actually, speaking of which, one of our guests got pushed forward, but that's a good thing to mention to everyone listening. A friend of ours who we met a long time ago at a very fun Force Friday, named Adam Lamping. You can follow him on Twitter. He made a very unique website. He used to be one of the guys managing rebelscum.com, very famous Star Wars fan website, and he kind of graduated on from there to do his own stuff. Now he's got a new website called geekgiftregistry.com. So make sure you look it up. It's essentially just a giant database of multiple websites where you can find collectibles and toys from various Star Wars merchandise and Power Rangers and TMNT and Transformers and whatever else. You can find all of it on this website, and you can make this custom wish list that you can send to family and friends and stuff like that, so they know what to buy you from various different sources. And it's gonna be an expanding website with other features coming soon. But it's basically just a universal kind of nerdum merch website, which is kind of cool. So he's gonna be joining us in 1 week, which was pushed forward from this week, but he's going to be joining us to chat about that and, chat a bit about his Star Wars collecting and, merchandise and this and that. And last time he was on the show, it was a good time. So looking forward to having him back. And we do have the finale of the Book of Boba coming out this upcoming Wednesday, which is pretty nuts. We're going to see the conclusion to that show. and you can look forward to our after show / review on that.
Wow.
Did you guys have any last words to say before we wrap it up?
I'm looking this up right now. He's from Mount Lebanon, Pennsylvania. Do you know that Ming-Na Wen, who's in the Book of Boba Fett and like the Bad Batch and stuff in Mandalorian, is also from there?
Really?
They went to the same hometown. Yeah.
It's a conspiracy.
They're both partly raised there. Oh, cool.
Interesting.
Yeah. Good to know. Yeah.
What about you, Blake? Any last words?
Well, I don't have anything as wise as Ben to add to this conversation, but thanks for having me, man. It's always a good time. And Ben, it was a good duel. Looking forward to the next one.
I'm still salty about the Star Killer question, but we have to replay those games now.
Yeah.
It's all right, man. I got my
Dude,
my
breaks
droid
my heart.
question.
I was like, I thought he was the Jedi, but I remember his name in that game.
What's funny is when I was guessing on mine, I was picturing the planet from Force Unleashed, which was all ship parts.
Right. Yeah.
That's what
Raxus, right?
Yeah,
Raxus,
that's what I was.
yeah.
That's what I pictured in my head. So I'm like, oh, it's gotta be ship parts, not droid parts, because they're all ships.
Right.
I just remember looking at it, and it looks like it's droids. I remember his feet.
Yeah, it was super battle droid parts from the arms and all that stuff.
Right.
But the funny thing is they never actually confirmed the name of that planet that he's found on. So it very well could be Raxus, but yeah, I guess.
Oh, I was thinking of the wrong scene because I was thinking on the junk planet, not
Right.
on the like with the Night Sisters.
Right, Dathomir. Right.
Yeah, because he technically gets robot legs twice.
Yeah. So the mother
times.
kind of ghosts. She shows up and kind of puts them back together and disappears again. So.
Right.
Yeah,
I had the wrong one.
All right. Thanks again, guys, for coming back on the show, and we'll catch you in the next one.
Keep flying.
All right, and all you guys listening at home, thank you so much for tuning in to the show. Hope you guys all had a great Star Wars podcast day, and look for those other shows using the hashtag Star Wars Podcast Day or SWPD 2022. All our contact information is in the description below. Look for those links, and we're looking forward to the finale for Book of Boba. We'll see you in the next one. May the Force be with you.